Hello everyone, I'm Kurt Owen. Welcome to this month's newsletter. I want to talk about something that's extremely important, and honestly a lack of understanding of it will mess a lot of things up, and honestly it'll mess up your theology. And that is spiritual authority. One of the biggest questions that I get asked as I travel around is this. They said, if God is such a good God, why are all these bad things happening? Or if God is such a good God, why did my loved ones die? I've had loved ones die, you've had loved ones die. Why is it that these things keep happening? Actually, the answer can be found in the very first book of the Bible, and this is in Genesis chapter 1, and this gets down to verse 26 when God is creating man. And He said, Then God said, Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion, and He tells them again who He has dominion over. Now, here's the thing about this. This is where a lot of people get confused, because they say God is in control. Yes, if you're talking about ultimately that God will have His way, yes, God is in control. But from the very first day that Adam was born, He gave man dominion over the earth. And the day He did that, man became responsible for what happened in the earth. This is the reason that Adam was able to relinquish the earth and his authority to the devil, in a couple chapters later, because of the fact that he had the right to. He had dominion. He had dominion over all of the earth. People say, well, why are there children starving in Africa? Pretty simple. Do you know that in the United States, we alone could grow enough food to feed every person on the face of the earth? This does not count all the other vastly fertile nations in the earth, but we here in the United States. But you want to know why we don't? Because of the fact that people value money more than they value human lives. And it's very true, because, the first time I'm in Wyoming right now, Torrington, Wyoming, one of the first trips I had out here, I saw wheat piled up alongside the road. And massive stacks. And I asked somebody, I said, well, why is that? What is that? That's wheat. Well, shouldn't they get it to market? No, they actually get paid not to sell it. Really? Why? Because if we were to sell that much wheat, it would reduce the price of wheat. Now see, that wheat could have been sent to all the people that are starving, but they chose not to just let it die and become corrupt. So you cannot blame God for those children starving. You need to blame the people, the man that God gave dominion over the earth to, And see, that's the thing that so often we don't understand. There's so many things that are happening in the earth because of man's authority, and the fact that, also the fact that he relinquished his authority to the devil. That's the reason the Bible calls the devil the god of this world. Because once Adam subjugated his authority to the devil had the right to do certain things. In fact, when Jesus came back, He began to teach about authority and how to operate in authority. Now notice this in Matthew chapter 8. And this is with the centurion. Sorry guys, this is a brand new Bible and it's still a little stuck on the pages. Now this is when a centurion came to him, and this is in Matthew 8:5. Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. And Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. Now the centurion said, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word and my servant will be healed. Now let me just stay there for a second. Jesus is the authority on who is worthy. And Jesus had already made up His mind to go to this man's house. But because the man had authority over his house, He had the authority to tell Jesus, no, you're not coming to my house. And Jesus did not fight against him in that. But let me explain something to you. If you tell Jesus you need something and He says, I'm going to help you, don't sit there and begin to tell Him you're not worthy of the help. He's already determined you are worthy. But anyway, as it goes on here, it says, the centurion answered and said, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof, but speak a word only, and my servant will be healed. For I also So he recognized Jesus was a man under authority. Am a man under authority, having soldiers unto me. I say to this one, go, and he goes. To another, come, and he comes. To my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he marveled to those who followed and said, assuredly, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. I say that many will come from the east, the west, and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, as you have believed, so let it be done to you. And his servant was healed from that same hour. Now, what was Jesus recognizing, and what was the centurion recognizing? The centurion recognized that Jesus had authority, and that Jesus was exercising in that authority. In other words, you know what? Jesus, I don't need you to come to my house. I just need you to give me your word. Exercise your authority, and that will change everything in my life. The centurion recognized that. And that was really all he wanted. He didn't need hands laid on. He didn't need somebody to beg. No, you give me your word, that'll be enough. And Jesus marvels at this. And he recognizes this use of authority. And he then exercised his authority on his behalf. Now see, this is Jesus reclaiming the authority that was given to man and then utilizing it correctly. Then he later taught man how to do it. Here we're in Mark 11. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to read this whole thing. But in Mark 11, this is the story of the fig tree. Speaking of trees, we got some coming through on us. In Mark 11, we see where Jesus, in verse 12, it says, now the next day when they had come out of Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing the fig tree from afar off having leaves, he went to see if perhaps he could find something on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves on it, for it was not the season of figs. In response, Jesus said to it, let no one eat treat of you ever again. And his disciples heard it. Now what happens is that the fig tree withers and dies. And when it does, everybody, Pete over here in 21 says, Rabbi, look, the fig tree whom you cursed is withered. Now notice what Jesus says next. He says, Jesus answered and said to him, have faith in God. Or in other words, this is the way, technically according to the Greek, it's have the God kind of faith. And he said this to him, he said, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Now this is interesting because Jesus says this ability is not limited to me. Because he says, whosoever shall say. In other words, you need to exercise authority over your problems. You need to take back your authority and use it. But see, this is what happens, is people, when they start having mountains form in their life, they don't speak to the mountain. They don't say, go. Remember what the centurion said? I say to this one, go, and he goes. I say to this one, come, and he comes. I say to this one, do this, and he does it. And Jesus marveled. Jesus says, if you got a mountain and you don't want it there, you tell it to go. But people don't. They sit there and they beg and they bawl and squall about how hard life is and why is this in my life and everything. And yet, I honestly, I think sometimes it goes back to what happened with Moses at the Red Sea. When Moses encountered the Red Sea and all the people are complaining and Moses stands up and makes a declaration of faith, you remember what God said to him? He says, why do you cry to me? Well, I could have thought of a couple million reasons to cry to him. I got all these people shouting at me. I've got this army breathing down my neck. I got some reasons why I'm shouting to you. But then this is what God told him. He said, use that rod. Raise up that rod I gave you. In other words, you have the authority to split this thing. You don't need to cry to me. You need to keep utilizing the authority that's been given to you. Now, what are you doing with your authority? We need to quit blaming God for what's going on. We need to quit blaming God for the mountains, but instead say, Lord, I thank you for the authority. Well, I don't have the power to move the mountain. No, you don't. You're in a lot of ways, you're a lot like a policeman that stands up and walks out into the intersection and puts their hand up, right? The policeman in and of himself physically does not have the ability to stop the car, but what he represents and what has been conferred upon him by the authority, yeah, he's got that. And because of that authority, he can make the car stop. And then if the car doesn't choose to stop, there's some old boy's going to show up and make the car stop. And that's where you have to realize that God is for you. You need to begin to exercise your authority. Quit complaining about the problems and begin to speak to them. We're going to talk more and more about this because there's so much in this. And when people don't understand it, so many people begin to blame God. And the minute you blame God, you've cut off your faith. We love you very, very much. Terry and I are praying for you. The family of Kurt Owen Ministries is praying for you. Share this with somebody because I believe it'll help them. Remember this, Jesus is risen. Victory is assured. And there's never a day that there's not somebody that believes in you because Jesus and we do.